Exactly.
As a driven dentist, you see the world differently. Where some see scarcity, you see abundance. When others want to give up, you keep going. You're building an amazing life of significance. That means you can't rely on ordinary advice from ordinary advisors to get to your goals. You want advice that's going to help maximize your net worth so you can take even better care of the people you love, the causes you care about, and make your dent in the universe. But the fact is, this advice remains hidden because relatively few professionals are well versed in them, and the extremely affluent don't care to let you know about them. Join us as we pull back the curtain to reveal the often hidden advice and strategies used by today's most successful individuals and families. Welcome to Dental Wealth Nation. Here's your host, Tim McNeely.
Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to the show. I am so excited that you are here today. And I don't know about you, but sometimes figuring out how to finance a dental practice can feel absolutely overwhelming. There's so many moving parts and so many things to do. Well, the good news is we are here today to help clear up that financial confusion for you today. And by the time we finish, you're going to know how to be prepared to buy a dental practice. You're going to have a mental checklist for the process and what the banks are going to be looking for and what they're going to be asking for so that you can walk in prepared. But most importantly of all, you're going to feel inspired to get out there and buy and own your own dental practice. And I'm so excited today. We've got Paula Bravo from Columbia Healthcare Banking. And as I was chatting with Paula, one of the things I love so much about her is she understands what being a small business owner is like because her parents were small business owners, and she has a passion for helping people in healthcare get into and own practices, and she knows what it takes to be successful. Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, this is so great. We've already got people tuning in. And if you've got questions, please post them in the chat today. We want to make this interactive. We want to serve you. We want to get you the resources that you need. And so, Paula, give us a little bit about your background and how you got started in healthcare banking and why you love doing what you do.
Well, I got started actually in small business lending right out of college. As you mentioned, my parents were small business owners, and so that is sort of ingrained in me, and went into small business lending, and then was looking for a little bit of a change, not a huge change, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I have always loved healthcare lending, doing loans to doctors and dentists and oral surgeons. And there was an opportunity and I took it. So I'm just excited to now be doing exclusively healthcare lending and mostly dental. And it's been a good ride so far. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, excellent. That's so exciting. And when it comes to financing, there can be some different choices and different options to think through. So I just want to dive right in and get started, right? Can you give us an overview of some of the different financing options that are available for dental practices and what that looks like and how we can even start thinking about like what kind of loan do we need?
hmm Yes, there are a lot of options out there for you, not only in the type of loan that you get, but the type of lender that you ultimately decide to work with. There are many. I normally I do a lot of presentations to students at dental schools, and I start out those presentations with banking can be very boring, but it is absolutely necessary. And you will need a bank that you can develop a relationship with over time and one that will guide you. And there are a lot of different options. There are small community banks, there are regional banks, there are national banks, there are SBA lenders, there are equipment lenders, and then there are dental specific lenders. And dental specific lenders are usually housed within a national bank or a regional bank, but they specialize in just dental practice financing. So you have a lot of different options. I would encourage everyone to research all of their options. Most likely it's going to be a dental specific lender that you find is going to understand your needs better than anyone else, but there are a lot of options out there, and I would encourage you to check all of them out before making a decision. As far as the loans that are out there for dental practice acquisitions, they are typically a term loan. And many of the nuances are the same from lender to lender, but you will find interest rate differences, fee differences, covenant differences, liquidity requirement differences. And so you want to make sure that you talk to several lenders. Make sure that you understand what their requirements are and how they best fit your specific needs.
Well, that's so helpful. And I'm married to a dentist, and one of the things my wife and I joke about a bit is oftentimes there's a dental tax when you buy specific dental equipment, right? The same stuff from someone else can cost a whole lot less, but you buy it from a dental supply company, and somehow it costs a whole lot more. It's for the same product. And so are all loans created equal? And does it cost more to work with a dental lender? Is there a dental tax, or does experience really matter in this area?
Experience matters a lot. You definitely want to be working with a lender that knows the dental industry. Most specific dental specific lenders are going to have better options, I would say, as far as their interest rates, their fees, things of that nature. SBA is a great program. I did SBA financing for many, many years, actually decades. And it is a wonderful program for most industries. Having been now in the healthcare lending industry, I haven't yet had to refer a client for SBA financing. We are able to do everything that has come in the door anyway through my institution conventionally. So there is going to be a big difference between an SBA loan or a conventional loan. Some lenders will recommend a line of credit. If you're purchasing hard assets, tangible assets, usually a term loan is a better option for you. But there are different ways to go about it. Expense wise, that's where the difference is going to come in the interest rate, the fees, things like that are going to be different from lender to lender depending on what their specific requirements are. Typically, they will offer a relationship pricing. And that means that dentists keep their primary operating accounts with the lender. The lender becomes their bank for all needs. And then you will typically get a better interest rate doing that. If you just do the loan with them and then all of your accounts are at a different lender, that usually will result in a higher interest rate. So make sure that you're researching all of that and asking questions.
Okay. So we've talked about the experience piece. We've talked about, the relationship piece. Are there other important factors that someone should consider when they're looking for a lender for buying a dental practice?
There is so much to consider, and I would say that probably the experience of your lender is going to be the most important thing that you're looking at. And because they're going to know the specific dental questions to ask, both of the buyer and the seller, because we are most likely going to be dealing with both a buyer and a seller. So the buyer is going to have their own specific requirements that we want to meet, and the seller will have requirements that we want to meet. So working with a dental specific lender is very important. Somebody that has several loans under their belt, so that that you're working with somebody that knows the right questions to ask and that can put you in the right loan, because these loans are not one size fits all. It's going to be different for every borrower depending on where you are in your career, whether you're a new dentist, an expanding dentist, whatever that means. But you definitely want to make sure you're working with an experienced lender.
Okay, excellent. And so let's say we've been out of dental school a couple years, and let's say you're starting to look for a practice. Like, what does the process look like? I mean, do I call up some brokers and look at a practice first? Do I call the bank first? Do I call the how do I even start thinking through this? Like what's the process look like?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it is going to be intimidating at first if you are fresh out of school. I personally would not recommend that you buy a practice the minute you graduate from dental school. You don't have the business knowledge yet, because if I do a presentation at a dental school, I usually ask, how many of you took business courses in either undergrad or dental school. Nobody raises their hands. They're great dentists. They've got all the modern technology that they've worked with. They've passed their boards. They've done everything. They have their license. They can walk into a dental practice, but they need the experience of working in a practice and getting some feel for the business aspect of it, because even though they're dentists, they are going to become small business owners overnight. So we want them prepared as they can be. If someone completed a residency, whether it's a general practice residency, a GPR, or an oral surgery residency, they have been on the fast track to owning a practice. So they are much more likely to be approved for financing than somebody that's fresh out of school and just walks into a dental practice as an associate. So I would recommend being an associate for at least 2 to 3 years, getting your feet wet as far as learning as much about the business aspect of it as you can. You're going to have a much better chance at getting financing if you do that. So once you do have a little bit of experience, then what we would do is you're going to be calling lenders and you're going to be looking for a practice. If you call a lender first, which I do recommend, you can get basically a checklist of everything that we're going to require from them, the dentist, and everything that we will ask for from the selling dentist. It's important that a buyer understand what we're going to request from a seller, because the seller undoubtedly will come back and say, well, why does the lender need that? Why does the lender need this? And that's understandable. We get that they want to provide as little as possible. They're on their way out. They're looking at retirement. And we understand that, but there are reasons for everything that we ask for. If the buyer understands why we're asking for this information, it's going to help the seller be more willing to provide that information. So we're going to give you a checklist of what we will request, and both from the seller and you, that will give you an opportunity to make sure that your financials and all of your information is together, organized, and ready to present to a lender. So it will be things like tax returns, a personal financial statement. You need to make sure that you understand what your student loan payments are going to be like. They are less when you're fresh out of school. And we want to make sure that once you start earning income, you could go from earning zero to earning $200,000 in 1 year. Your payments on your student loans are going to go up. So we want to make sure that you understand where you are at with your student loans and what your payments are going to be. We want to see that you pay your bills and that you don't spend every dime that you make. And so we want you to be prepared for having a good, solid personal financial statement. We don't expect you to have a lot of money in the bank at first, because you haven't worked since you started dental school, most likely. So anything that you do have in the bank is most likely from the past year or 2 years, maybe 3 years, but it's not going to be an extensive amount. We do understand that you're going to have student loans, and that's not necessarily a negative for us. We know that it's expensive to get into and out of dental school. So we want to make sure that you have filed taxes, that they're ready to present to a lender, that you haven't received them from your CPA or enrolled agent and filed them somewhere you don't know where they are. Your personal financial statement, a summary of your student debt, a summary of all your other loans, which is going to go on your personal financial statement. Make sure you got your license. You can't open a practice unless you have a license. And sometimes, a new dentist won't realize they've got to have that license in hand in order to buy a practice, and it can take a while. So you want to make sure that you are on top of that with the state to make sure that your license is ready. Then you would start looking for a practice, and there are a lot of different ways. The most obvious is a broker, to go through and look at the broker listings. Attorneys and CPAs also have a lot of insight with their own clients as to who might be getting ready to sell a practice. Consultants, there are a lot of dental consultants out there that also mingle in the sales, the acquisition part of it. So there's a lot of different places you can go to find your practice. And then we would work with you to get everything that we need from the seller to start an application.
So is it important to have a practice in mind before we get financing, or should we get financing? Is like when buying a home, right? Oftentimes, we're told to go get a pre-approval before we start looking, or is dentistry any different? Should we look at practices first and then get a loan? Like walk me through what that could look like.
I would recommend it's different than buying a home. A home, a pre-qualification is going to tell you based on your income, this is the amount you qualify for. It's pretty black and white. With dental practice financing, there's a lot more that goes into it. So you are going to be having to look at much more than just the financial part of it. So it's really a good idea to talk to a lender first. They can tell you what they're going to be looking for. So, and things that you might, as a dentist, not even think about. So one of the things is, let's say you find a practice in the big city. Well, you're a rural person. You grew up somewhere in a rural community, but you find this practice in the city and you think it's going to be perfect for you. We're going to ask you that question. Have you looked at the demographics of where you want to buy a practice compared to where you think you want to live, where you want your family to grow up, where you think that you're going to be the happiest? So location is huge. Does your clinical skill set, does your hand speed fit that of the practice? Does the type of practice, is it a general practice that refers out all of their complicated procedures? Or is it a practice that keeps everything in-house and earns the income from not having to refer anything out? What type of dentist are you? Do you just want to be a general practice dentist? Well, you don't want to buy a practice that handles all of their own implants and extractions and does all their own endo and all of that, because you're going to drown pretty quickly if you get into a practice like that and you just want to be a general dentist. You're going to start referring business out, and that's going to be a lot of lost income. Vice versa. If you want to do all of that and you find a practice that's just a GPR practice, you better have a pretty good business plan for showing how you're going to build that practice up to be what you want it to be with your experience, your skill set, your hand speed. So we're going to be asking all those questions that don't have anything to do with the financial part of it.
Interesting. Now, we've talked about student loans a couple times here, and I know that often is a big issue for doctors considering buying a practice. They're looking at their financing and thinking, "All right, I've already got all this debt on student loans. Like, why would it be wise to go buy a practice? Should I pay off my student loans first, or can actually buying a practice help accelerate paying off student loans?"
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's a scary thing for a 25 to 30-year-old who is already saddled with sometimes up to $500,000 in debt. And sometimes that includes dental school and undergrad. Hopefully undergrad debt's paid off, but you never know. If you got into dental school right away, you still might have some undergrad debt. By the time you get out of dental school, maybe you're thinking about getting married if you're not already. A lot of young dentists already have a family. It's overwhelming to think about adding more debt when you've already got so much. But if you think about your earning potential, if you own your own practice versus your earning potential if you're working for someone else, you will overwhelmingly see owning a practice is going to be a better deal for you. You will have control over your income, so you can expand your income. You can cut back if you need to. You have complete control over your practice, and you can bring in associates. You have many more options when you're the owner as opposed to if you're working for someone else. Also, if you do have a lot of student debt, the practice you buy has to cash flow. You're going to be looking at all different kinds of practices. Sometimes it's enticing to look at a practice with a lower purchase price because then the payments are lower. But is that practice going to be able to support its own debt and your personal obligations? Most likely not. So you're going to be looking at a practice that's got a lot more earning potential, a lot more revenue. So you've got more opportunity to pay yourself a larger salary in addition to paying your loan. So it really is going to come down to cash flow and how much the dental practice throws off and whether it can cover its own expenses as well as your expenses. So you're going to narrow your prospects by knowing what kind of cash flow you're going to need going forward. And that's a huge help because then you're not spending a lot of time on practices that are never going to support the debt that it's going to need to support. If you're looking only at practices that will support your debt, it's a much easier process because you're not wasting time on practices that just won't work.
That's interesting. So it may actually be okay to stretch for a larger practice because the net to you as the buyer could be substantially higher, even though you're borrowing more money because it's a more profitable practice, which would actually help, maintain lifestyle and support the other debt that you have. And so what I really kind of hear you saying is that we should be looking at this in a holistic manner and really seeing how the practice can help support not just the loan, but just our life in general.
Absolutely. Yes. And don't look at larger practices as a negative just because you have a lot of student debt. A larger practice is going to generate more revenue. Your collections are going to be higher, and it's going to give you a lot more opportunity to pay yourself a higher salary while growing the practice, because the practice is going to need to retain some of its profit to continue to grow. And for CapEx expenses and for hiring and making sure that you can keep the personnel that you have, as I'm sure a lot of dentists know, it's tough to find good help, for lack of a more sophisticated term. Finding good people that will stay is tough. You have to treat them well, you have to pay them well, and in return, they will serve you well. So you have to have enough retained in the business, in the practice, to maintain it and grow it and keep it healthy while making sure that you can service your own personal obligations and support your family. So a larger practice with a higher price tag is not a negative.
Okay, very, very interesting. So the other thing I want to touch on is just kind of the current rate environment that we find ourselves in, right? Interest rates have certainly ticked up. They're not at all-time lows anymore. And so should this put a pause on us buying practices and making investments in our future? Should we be waiting until rates come down? Like how do we sort through like the whole timing issue? And should we even worry about timing when buying a practice?
Mhm. I can't stress enough that the interest rates, number one, I'm old enough to have seen many, many, many cycles of interest rates. And people are still trying to get beyond interest rates related to the pandemic. They were extraordinarily, unusually, untypically low during that time period. And yes, they have ticked up, but they are not, in my opinion, having been through many interest rate cycles, outrageous by any means. They are still reasonable to the point where you can get a loan, you can make payments, and you're not going to be bleeding interest on every payment that you make. So the interest rate environment right now is not horrible. Yes, it's ticked up, and it went up quick. I think that's one of the things that scared people is it went up really fast. Rates have somewhat stabilized over the last several months, and healthcare, dental practice financing is still very reasonably priced. We typically tend to be a little bit lower than a other industry financing, and we are very competitive. So you will find that banks that have dental specific financing programs are going to be very competitive. They are going to do what they can to win a deal. And I think that most young dentists that are going into practice, buying a business will find that this is a great time to buy. The lending industry, the dental lending industry is alive and well, and me and every other lender out there that is specializing in dental financing is busy. We are very busy, and it's the interest rates have not kept us from doing business. Let's put it that way.
Okay, interesting. So really, if you're in the market for practice, if you're at a point where you think this fits your lifestyle, we really shouldn't let the current interest rates get in the way, or because it's still actually very affordable to buy a practice right now.
Yes, most definitely. Hmm.
Okay. What are some common pitfalls that you see dentists make when they're looking for financing? And more importantly, how can we avoid those common mistakes and pitfalls?
Hmm. Due diligence is key. So when dentists are looking at practices, the best thing they can do for themselves is due diligence. They want to make sure that they understand the financials of the practice that they are buying. But in addition to that, they want to look at things like the staff. They need to know who works there, how many hygienists are there, how many dental assistants are there, are there any associates there, what are the terms of an associate contract. They want to make sure that the staff is going to work for their specific situation, and that they will stay if the dentist wants them to stay, that there's a good chance that they will. And what I mean by that is, what kind of rapport does the selling dentist have with his staff?
Mm.
Is the dentist going to be open with them about selling, or is it going to be kept quiet? And one day they work for the selling dentist, and the next day they work for the buying dentist. Whichever way that goes, it sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes it doesn't. And need to know what there is that they're going to be working with. They also need to look at equipment. Is the equipment newer? Is it state of the art, or is it old and it's all going to have to be replaced the minute he walks or she walks in the door? So looking at financials, looking at staff, looking at equipment, looking at the payer mix. Is it all fee for service? Is it part fee for service, part insurance? And if they do accept insurance, what type of insurance? We all know that Delta Premier is something that all dentists need to look at when they're looking at a practice, because that could significantly impact collections. And that is something that's going to be phased out over time. But right now, dentists are still having to look at that and see what the hit is going to be once they buy the practice. So payer mix, insurance, fee for service. They should look at the lease on the facility, making sure that if they're going to stay in that location, that the lease doesn't expire in 6 months or a year. A lender is going to be looking at that as well, but it might be a situation where buying dentist has to go in and get an option to renew, or a lease extension. So there's a lot more to it than just looking at the financials, and due diligence is all part of that process. So that, to me, is the key.
Okay. And so really that due diligence process plays a huge role in getting the practice, because there is so many things to think through. And so no, thank you for bringing that up. Have you observed any kind of recent trends in the dental financing world? And what do you just see going on in the marketplace right now?
Um, you know, as far as, I don't know that there are really any trends other than the continued trend that a lot of dentists want to own their own practice. I know that that associate work is something that a lot of dentists just prefer. They don't want the headache of owning a practice. I know working in a DSO is something that a lot of dentists prefer, but we still think that the majority of dentists want to own their own practice. So the trend of being a business owner, owning a practice, hopefully eventually buying a building for their dental practice to come into, maybe that would be a trend. is that a lot of dentists, instead of leasing their facilities for the long term, are really interested in purchasing a building or constructing a building. A lot of dentists will do ground up construction. So the trend towards increasing wealth and having retirement opportunities goes hand in hand with purchasing real estate once you do own a practice. So that could be a trend right along with just dentists continuing to want to own their practice and be a business owner. The environment, again, is financing is, not to repeat myself, but alive and well. We are excited to lend to dentists. We like lending to dentists for a lot of reasons. Dentists tend to be great borrowers. They pay their bills. They're responsible. They are highly skilled and highly educated. Lenders love that. Lenders want to work with people that are excited about their trade and financially astute enough to understand that that they've got to pay their bills and they have to be responsible, and that kind of all goes together. And that's why we love lending to dentists.
What about additional support for dentists? And right, with all the things that go on, you mentioned the due diligence piece, right, and lease negotiations, and even putting together business plans for the practice. Does all that fall on the dentist, or does the doctor have to go out and assemble a team? How do you assist with just getting all of these things done?
Mm-hmm. So lenders are a big part of that. Once the dentist owns a practice, we provide all banking services. We provide treasury management services. We provide wealth management services. Most lenders do that. Consultants do that as well. And it's, that's going to be a big part of your daily life once you own a practice. Leading up to that, you're going to want to align yourself with a dental specific CPA, somebody that does, mostly practice accounting and practice bookkeeping. You're going to want to align yourself with a good attorney, because you want to make sure that, number one, the contract you sign is going to be as much to your benefit as it is to the seller. And then ongoing with a good lawyer is somebody that can help with employment contracts and making sure that your lease is going to be beneficial to you and not just your landlord if you're leasing. Purchase contracts for real estate. So a CPA and an attorney that are dental practice specific are a must. And then depending on your needs, there are consultants that specialize in insurances. So, and right now, just making sure that somebody takes a look at Delta Premier and exactly what kind of an effect that's going to have on your practice. Knowing what kinds of insurances you need as a dentist and being compliant. HIPAA is a huge thing. And you want to make sure that you are working with somebody that knows how to keep you HIPAA compliant. It's I don't want to say it's new to dentists, but HIPAA has become a big deal in the dental industry, and you have to make sure that you're compliant. So we know a lot of people, most dental specific lenders do, and we're able to give you names of the folks that we've worked with, that we respect and we trust, and that can help you not only with your practice purchase, but going forward as you grow your practice and your wealth continues to grow. You want to be aligned with the right people, because you're not going to have time as a dentist to do all of that yourself. You're a dentist, and you want to be the best dentist that you can be. And you want to be able to provide as many treatment options as you're able, and you want to practice dentistry. So aligning yourself with the right people gives you the flexibility to be the dentist, but also build your wealth along with staying compliant and along with making sure that contracts are all in place and good.
Wow, that's such good insight. So thank you for sharing all of this with us. And what advice would you just have for dentists who are kind of on the fence still, even after listening through all of this, what encouragement or insights or just, what would you say to that person who is just really kind of thinking about it and not sure if this is the path for them or not?
Mhm. It is owning a dental practice is not going to be for everyone, but you've put a lot of time into your education. You've put a lot of time into learning your trade. The best way for you to showcase that is to own your own practice. You will be able to control everything in your practice. As long as you know that owning a small business is a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it is a lot of preparation, and it's a lot of ongoing attention to making sure that everything is in order all the time. Now, whether that's with you doing it yourself or aligning yourself with the right people that will help you to expand, to grow, to purchase additional practices or real estate. As long as you have the mindset and the work ethic to put in the hours and the time, owning a practice is going to be your best option for growing your wealth. And that's probably the biggest takeaway, is having the control to grow your wealth while practicing your skill. And if you just want to go to work from 8 to 5, owning a practice is probably not for you. But if you're looking at growing your practice and growing your wealth, then it is by far the best option.
Wow. Well, hey, Paula, thank you for sharing so generously with us and really helping us think through the process of buying a practice. I know I certainly feel a lot more confident in terms of, being prepared to buy a dental practice. I have certainly a mental checklist of all the different things that banks are going to be asking for. And, I'm not a dentist. I do live with one, but, after listening to this, I'm inspired to get out there and own a practice, especially when it comes to wealth creation. And as a wealth advisor for top dental entrepreneurs, it's something I always recommend is equity ownership in a business. It's one of the greatest creators of wealth that's ever existed, is owning your own business, because you really do put your financial future in your hands. And when you've got control of it, much, much better things happen. So thank you for sharing so generously with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This was wonderful, and I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. How can we get in touch with you, and how can we find you if we have questions?
I am with Columbia Healthcare Banking. My phone number, would you like that?
Sure.
My phone number is 916-858-9705. Best way to reach me is by email, and it's my first and last name, Paula Bravo, at columbiahealthcarebanking.com. It's a long one, but really easy.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We've got some hearts and likes coming in, so the audience has certainly enjoyed what you've shared so generously. I'll give them one last question or one last moment if they've got any questions. So if you're listening, you got some questions for Paula, we'll stick around for a couple more moments, and if not, if I don't see anything come in, we'll go ahead and sign off, and we'll see you again here soon on the Dental Wealth Nation show. So thank you once again, Paula. Such a joy to talk to you, and thank you for making a difference for so many dentists out there.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you all again here soon on the Dental Wealth Nation show.
You've been listening to Dental Wealth Nation. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Join us next time as we pull back the curtain to reveal the often hidden advice and strategies used by today's most successful individuals and families, and help maximize your net worth so you can take even better care of the people you love. Till next time, make sure to hit the website at dentalwealthnation.com.